So as we build checks and wrinkles, we're always looking to recycle the techniques of families that we're already doing by position. So when we're building it out, we're going to try to make sure that every position is in a technique that they already know how to do in that family of 3 to 5.
Jordan Irsik, the defensive coordinator at Folsom High School, the 2025 state champion in California, is one of those coaches who makes you rethink what organized really means. Not because his call sheet looks clean, though it does, but because the call sheet is the final product of a full week process. Saturday review, Saturday night translation and tendency work, Sunday meeting structure, practice scripts tied to the opponent's 20 best plays. Thursday, final share and practice for the coach. Then on Friday, a live feedback loop where information moves between the box, the sideline, and the players with intent. That's the part that matters. Too many coaches treat a call sheet like a laminated menu. Jordan treats it like a system. It's built to help him stay aggressive without getting reckless, stay disciplined without getting predictable, and make adjustments without panicking. The language he uses, the set, stress, break progression, the efficiency triggers, and the unit goals are all designed to make decision-making faster under pressure. And it's all connected to how they tag, review, and self-scout so the work compounds week to week. This episode is powered by modern football technology, the real-time analytics and decision support platform built for football staffs. Modern football helps you capture what's happening, see it clearly, and make better calls faster with the workflow to turn information into action on Friday night. To get Coach Irsik's call sheet and see how modern football powers game day decisions, head to modernfootball.com/call sheet. The link is in the description. We're back here again with Jordan Irsik, who's the defensive coordinator at Folsom, a state champion here in 2025. So congrats on that, Jordan. It's great to have you back here.
Yeah, great to be back and appreciate the call out for that. As a huge community effort and getting everything done this year the way we were able to get it done. So it's good to put a ring on the finger.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jordan, we've always been interested in how you do things and obviously the work you're doing with using in-game analytics and those types of things. But what we really want to dig into today is how you set up your call sheet. I think it was super interesting when I heard the work you did as an offensive coordinator. Now you're kind of back home. Defense actually is your thing. So back on the defensive side of the ball. And that's what we want to dig into today is your approach to setting this up, starting with game prep and really walking us through the week. So let's start there. Let's talk about game prep and your approach and how that really begins with Saturday mornings.
Yeah, so Saturdays, that's a big review day for us. The kids come in to lift. Lifting's light, but it gets them loosened up, and then we get them into film to review game film from the night before with position coaches. And as we're going through there, pretty nice thing about what we're doing is all of our game film from the night before is already tagged, thanks to modern football. So we can go right into it without having to stay up super late or get up super early to do the tagging on the film. So it allows us to get our cut-ups prepped pretty quickly. So as we go through that, as we're reviewing things, we can track things like our tackling metrics, where we were efficient, where we weren't efficient, and then we can review those specific looks in the next morning and try to be efficient, get the kids out at a decent time. And we're very fortunate to have good players. So a lot of our kids are trying to get out the door to go to a visit on Saturday also, because they're trying to go to Cal or Stanford or whatever to go catch a game. Also, from there, we dismiss our coaches. I send them home. We're working strictly on data breakdown for the next week based off the opponent film that we traded. So we don't have to do any more review from the game before because everything's already been done, right? So it allows us to really spend our time on Saturday just doing data entry on the scout film from the trade. And in that, what we do is I got a pretty good staff and pretty sizable army of guys doing it. So everybody just gets assigned a couple columns, and we always take a hard look at the scores from the games, and then we put a playlist together, total playlist of what we want broken down. So that way we don't have to, we don't just fly through a game where the final score is 55-7 or anything like that. We want to spend time with games that were competitive and close and evaluating their ones and things like that. So going through there, and then we're trying to put, week to week it changes. But I think our main goal, we always want to try to get 3 games in that breakdown for data. And sometimes it's 5, and then sometimes it's even a little less, depending on who we're playing. So once we get that playlist together, guys are just plugging data away and it's on their time. So some guys are like, I'm going to go home on Saturday. I'm going to take a nap. That's what I do. I throw on some college football. And then if there's a little 2-hour window there where there's no good game that I'm real interested in, I take a nap, and then I get to work on it Saturday night. So I actually work late. So I get that nap from Friday and then catch a game. And then Saturday night, by then a lot of guys are getting a lot of their stuff done. So it makes my job faster, because my job for breakdown is language based. So, I'm not touching D&D and yard line and personnel and things like that. Other guys are doing all that. So then when I'm going through, I'm putting everything in our offensive language as much as possible. So I'm trying to label formation and concept to our offensive language as closely as we can. And then what that does is, as we're putting scout cards and scouting reports together for the next week, when we talk about what the opponent is running, we can relate it back to things that our kids already know. So,
Yeah.
That's the benefit too of, we have a really good offensive staff that's very diverse in what they run. So we can tie back pretty much everything pretty close to what we're already doing.
Yeah. So I got a couple questions before you go on with this, and really going back to the corrections. Obviously, you saved a lot of time because you guys are tracking in game. I think it's a huge benefit of doing things that way. When you are going over corrections with your guys, you mentioned the playlist. Like, how much of that are you watching? Do you break it down to, we're going to watch these certain types of things? You're watching the film end to end. What's the approach there, and why?
I think it really depends on the game. Sometimes it's like, hey, we're just going to watch the first 2 series. Sometimes we're going to go end to end with it, because a lot of different unique things happen in that game. And then other times we're just going to create pretty specific cut-ups for certain calls that we were maybe pretty good at or not very good at. And we just use it as teaching points, right? And so we're trying to stay to a teaching point. The main objective is we try to get the kids out of film in an hour. So sometimes going end to end in a very exotic game is not feasible in an hour, right? That may take longer. So we're really trying to cut out the things that we don't need to talk about and try to stay, we're not trying to overload these kids. So we're just trying to keep it simple. So really it depends on how the game went the night before.
Yeah. Well, I could say I love the approach too, that after that, everybody's out. I would love to work for a coach like that, because I wasn't like that myself as a head coach. I mean, part of it was the technology, just thinking back to that time. Huddlehead was not around yet when I was a head coach in high school. So it wasn't like we could go home and work on it. So we were a slave to the film room. And because of that too, breakdowns were done in a different way. It was pretty much, you might get one game, assign another game, and then another guy would get a third. And maybe those guys sat there with a partner and did it. But I think the columns, like, you're in charge of these few things and watching it, it goes so much faster. And it goes faster because that guy's only looking for a small set of things. He doesn't have to focus on everything. He might be, naming the front or naming a coverage or whatever it might be. I think those guys also then, can offer you more as you guys get back together, because their eyes were trained on, I'm only watching these things and I'm only thinking about these things, that they can pretty quickly give you some answers that, when everybody sits down at the table, it really does create more collaboration into how you put a game plan together.
Yeah, so it does help a lot. I think it translates to our Sunday meeting really well, because guys get a better feel for, as they're coming in doing their inputs. Like, my guy that does the personnel is the same guy that does personnel for me on Friday night. He's the same guy that's calling that out. So when he comes in, like, he's got very good information on, what they're doing with their personnel groups. We always try to one of the things in our game plan meeting on Sundays, we're always trying to put the jersey numbers attached to the personnel, and he already has it, right? Because he's the guy that put it all in anyways, right? So a lot of guys can give you really specific information. The guy that does D&D and field position can definitely, he gives you better insights on, hey, you know, middle of the field, they kind of like take a shot. You know, short yardage, they're still passing the ball. You know, he can give you things like that because he's the one that did all the breakdown for it, right? So you can get really specific with the answers you're getting to pretty quickly.
Yeah. So jumping ahead, and again, I love the approach guys leave. I mean, it does give them their Saturdays. You know, you've got two very young ones now. Other guys will have kids who are playing ball that day or whatever it might be. So I think it's good to have that approach where you do get that flexibility of a Saturday, and you yourself being able to step away from things for a little bit, I think just gives you a clearer mind as you get back to it Saturday night.
Yeah, for sure. I need to do it because I'm way too deep into it during the week. And, you know, it's nice to be able to just take a step back for a few hours and let my brain reset and just kind of flush the entire previous week and then get some fresh eyes on it after, you know, a little bit of rest is always a good idea.
Yeah. So looking then at Saturday night to get ready for the things you're going to do on Sunday, what things do you like to have done yourself by the end of the night?
So Saturday night, big on, I'm trying to do formation and concept language specifically. And again, tying that all back to offensive concepts. I want all of that stuff done Saturday night. And then once I have that, I can start crunching some reports. Just seeing tendencies in there again with numbers and then pairing it back into language and cross-referencing. So I'm trying to get some reports done on Saturday. And when I say Saturday, it's really more like Sunday morning by that point, because it's typically around 1 or 2 a.m. But so I'm trying to get some reports done around that time to get me some basic ideas to kind of start thinking about. And then from there, Sunday, I'm not going to go any further with it until we get to our game plan meeting. So I'm going to spend time with my family. We're going to go to church. We're going to eat together. And then again, give me some fresh eyes, take it into the Sunday evening game plan meeting. And then, you know, we have those reports, guys have ideas based on their columns, what we're doing. And then we just kind of start going through our Sunday checklist with everything.
Yeah. So the things you're using to put this together, the data you're looking at, the metrics, what are the tools you're using, and what are the things you're able to find through there?
Yeah. So I think, you know, with Huddle, the big things we're looking at are based off the scouting film is we're looking at down and distance, field position with play type, personnel with play type. And then with the play types, then we're going to get into, okay, are there formational tendencies to certain concepts? So is it, if it's 3-by-1 FIB, then we're going to take a look at, okay, what concepts do they like to run out of 3-by-1 FIB? And then from there, we could kind of start paring down, okay, they're going to be, maybe they're more gap scheme this week. Maybe they're more outside zone this week. Maybe they like play action pass in that situation, but we're going to do those breakdowns in Huddle. The second thing we do is, you know, taking a look at the weeks before, because again, self-scout's done through Modern Football. So we have access to instantaneous self-scout. And so we can kind of go through and see what we've been efficient at in defending. So if we could see that, you know, our fire zone families have been really good against outside zone and not so good against gap scheme, right? Then we could kind of take a look at that from an efficiency standpoint with those numbers and say, hey, as we're going through this, we need to call more fire this week and a little bit less of this. And that kind of helps start the conversation in terms of play calling where we're getting the ideas. So Sunday meetings, you know, we're going to always take a look at, you know, on top of the Huddle reports, we're going to take a look at efficiently, you know, based off our self-scout, instantaneous through Modern Football, we could take a look at those efficient looks that we've been in defending with opponent concepts. So, you know, we could see about the fire zone versus outside zone versus gap scheme, right? And then we could see efficiently like, hey, maybe we need to call more fire zone calls in these situations to defend outside zone better this week because we're going to get more of that, right? And then call less of whatever else maybe hasn't been as good. So that's a good way to kind of start the conversation. Based off review from the previous game as well,
That's done based off of previous.
Yeah. So based off of previous review with that as well, the kind of just going through our checklist here, the first thing we always go through is our depth chart for special teams and defense. And we're going to kind of pair down with our personnel packaging on defense, who we want where, based off of the review from the previous week. So coach will get the depth chart up on the big screen, and then we always kind of go through there and say, hey, maybe our gold personnel is better for 11 personnel, and then we'll kind of match up who we want in that 11 personnel set, right? And so then we just kind of go through each of those, figuring out who's better where. That also helps us prep for practice during the week too, just because we have our depth chart set before practice. So as we're doing rotations during practice, when we call our personnel package twos, and then those kids just run on the field. So it's a good preparation tool to make practice run smoothly instead of coaches trying to plug kids in and out too much, and then you kind of get a mix up. So that's always the first thing. Second thing is just going through our weekly schedule. We are Folsom High School is a public school, and we have public school challenges. Along with coaches, we have a good mix of guys and a lot of bodies, and some guys work on campus and some guys don't. So kind of going through our week schedule based off the school's bell schedule for that week. Is there, a holiday on a Monday where, we kind of got to wrap our schedules around who's available at what times and things like that. So we always put that together to make sure everybody's on the same page for what times we're doing meetings and practices. Step 3, going through opponent personnel. So again, my guy that does the personnel plug and entry on the weekends, he's going through, he's checking, okay, and here's their personnel groups, 10, 11, 12, 22. Okay, in 10 personnel, these are the numbers we're looking for. 11, these are the numbers we're looking for. 22, etc. Right? And then we get those jersey numbers on here. The big ones we're always looking for are tight ends, fullbacks, running backs. And if we can get those jersey numbers identified, then that helps us ID personnel in the game, helps us get the right call on the field faster. Reviewing the scouting report. So we'll kind of start putting a scouting report together. So on our scouting report, we're going to talk about points of emphasis for the week, opponents' key players, opponents' key tendencies, any special formations or checks that we need to carry, and then from there, our call sheet, right? And so the kids have the preview of what the call sheet looks like as of Monday, and then they get it reshared with them on Thursday so they can review the calls. And then it's good for them to practice situational football as they're watching film at home. I think a lot of the challenges in high school football are coaches don't get as much time with the kids as they want, right, to prepare them. And part of that is like state laws and how many hours you're allowed to get with them in a week too, right? And we're dealing with the same thing. And our kids do a really good job watching a lot of film at home. So one of the things we're trying to do is teaching them how to watch film, right? So they have a copy of the call sheet on Monday. And so as they're watching the film on their own at home or during lunch or off period, whatever, they have that call sheet and they could cross-reference, it's tagged for them. They could see 1st and 10 personnel, and then they can kind of go and visualize, hey, this is the call right here, and then I can visualize my position and how to defend this play from the opponent. So we always put that at the end of the call sheet. Any special checks or wrinkles, that's a big one. I think we had to get better at about this year. I think that was something in 2024, we were 1 point shy of going to a state championship. And I think part of that was because we were so talented on defense that we never had to stray too far away from our DNA in terms of what we called. And this year was very different, not as talented, really challenging schedule. We had to be a little bit more creative with how we defended things and build new things. So as we build checks and wrinkles, we're always looking to recycle the techniques of families that we're already doing by position. So, we don't want a free safety coming on a spill under blitz on a play call, right? Because that's not in his family of 3 to 5 techniques that's already in our DNA. So when we're building it out, we're going to try to make sure that every position is in a technique that they already know how to do in that family of 3 to 5. And then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to put it through what we call our big 6, which is formational components. Okay, how do we handle motion in this call? How do we handle FIB? How do we handle empty? How do we handle condensed? And et cetera, right? And so we put the call through all of those different things to make sure that the call is sound for anything the opponent may give us, and that some of the times that may be even new, right? So then checking to make sure it's sound. If it checks all those boxes for the first and second step, then the call is in, right? So then we're going to put that in the game plan, and we're going to install that on Monday at our meeting and at practice. Step 6, practice plans. So from there, start building out the practice scripts for the week. We always spend time with individual, especially evaluating what types of tackles we were not good at the week before. And then anything else that we may need specific for that week as well. And then we're going to make sure we adjust our practice period times and what we're doing during those periods based off of that information. Tackling is a big piece of that. We're always make sure we're tracking our tackling data from the week before and just seeing, hey, we're not doing a very good job at maybe the wrap and roll at a negative angle this week. So then we're going to come back through on the negative angle tackling. We're going to reinforce that during our tackling circuit period. Other things with practice plans, just making sure with the script, we're always trying to look at how we defend the opponent's 20 best plays. So we don't get too carried away. So when we're scripting it, everything is going to be situational, hash down a distance and yard line on every opponent call. We always make sure that it's relevant to what the opponent's doing. So, we're not going to put a 14 personnel gap scheme play from the opponent on 1st and 10 from the 50-yard line, because that's not when they do it, right? So as we go back in, we're going to make sure that's all situational, personnel, down and distance, field position, tag it, make sure it's scout carded if needed, put it in our offense's language, and then script it based off our call sheet where we like it versus that, right? And then again, it's always like the opponent's 20 best plays. We're not trying to like spoon feed them a call they ran once 3 weeks ago or anything like that. Sometimes it's previous years of film against ourselves. What did they really like against us the year before and what was effective for them? And we'll make sure to revisit some of those as well, but it's always their 20 best plays. And then we just try to run and get repetitive at those plays. So we're really good at defending those plays. And then the last thing is just this is more Sunday night, Monday morning, and then throughout the week is we're just practicing and revising the call sheet. Making sure that as a defensive coordinator, as a play caller, I'm going to go through that call sheet as I'm watching film, and I'm actually going to practice calling the plays. So I got to turn the huddle snap detector off so it doesn't clip it too early, right? Make sure I'm getting it as they're breaking the huddle or as they're approaching the formation. I see D&D and personnel tagged. That's just like it's given to me in a headset already. And then I'm going to start practicing the call sheet, and then I watch it closely to make sure that play is good for what I want to defend that play, right? So we're practicing that throughout the week and making any tweaks as needed. Reshare the final call sheet on Thursday with any tweaks, then walk through it Thursday at practice. So that's definitely our entire process for everything on the weekend.
Very thorough. I love it. I love some of those things that you point out there, especially the detail that goes into your scripts. Now I know that's also going to be useful as you load that data into modern football. Talk to us about that, the synergy between the way you set up your scripts and then what's going in there so that you do have something extremely useful on game day that not only your players practice, but as you just talked about it, you've got your reps in at it too.
Yeah, so we always have everything in for the week gets inputted into modern football. It's pretty efficient to get in. It doesn't take very long to do, so we always start with making sure we got the right personnel groupings in there. And sometimes we have to adjust that a little bit. Maybe 1 week what they're doing in 12 personnel is the same exact thing that they're doing in 21 personnel. So we're going to group 12 and 21 as a personnel option on there. Any new plays they're doing, this is the best part of being a high school defensive coordinator, and I'm saying this sarcastically, is 1 week you might be defending mostly 10 personnel spread team. And then the next week, you're going to be playing an under center 22 personnel split back veer team, right? So how you label things is going to be different against the spread team versus the split back veer team under center, right? So we have to make sure we have the concept names updated for the opponent that week as well, and then update any new calls that we're carrying for that week in our play call set on there. So it's something that's not very time consuming. It takes me about 5 to 10 minutes to do. So I can just sit down on a Thursday and make sure it's all updated. And then, just make sure the computer's charged for my guy to get it running on Friday.
Yeah. Before we go further with the episode, a quick break to hear about our partner, Modern Football Technology. Modern Football is built for the exact moment the game starts moving fast. You can have a great plan all week, but Friday night is about seeing what's real, spotting what's changing, and making the right adjustment before the next series. Modern Football gives your staff a real-time decision support workflow to track what matters, surface tendencies as they're developing, and turn information into action without chaos. If you want to bring that clarity to your game day and you want the exact framework Coach Irsik is using, go to get his call sheet now at modernfootball.com/call sheet. The link is also in the description. Now let's get back to our conversation with Coach Irsik. So this information you've put together, the scripts, everything, obviously that's all going to go into the call sheet. I'm always interested in how coaches set that up. I think it's a visual aid. I think a lot of us, especially if you've been practicing it, you don't necessarily need to look at it, but it is good to have it very organized. So for when you do need to look at it, when you do need to review the situation. So we'd love to see what that looks like for you.
Yeah, so I've taken a lot of these ideas from my times calling offense as well, and I always felt as a good play caller, I didn't want to sit back and be too reaction to everything. So I wanted to make sure that I was being on the attack and on the edge of everything. And we've structured this call sheet because with the use of modern football, it really kind of reframed how we call plays during the game too, because we have access to those real-time numbers with tendencies and efficiency on our own calls, right? So as we structure a call sheet during the week, we're always looking at specific categories from a base, right? So we're looking at P and 10, first down after conversion, 2nd and 10, 2nd and 5 to 9. And then we're putting these based off personnel column information. And we always put the run pass split tendencies from our breakdown in there, right? And then from there, we're always looking at, I think Dub Maddox used to always talk about the fastball, curveball, strikeout theory. And then Bixby has kind of ran away with that idea. And now a lot of people are talking about it. And I did the same thing on offense. So as a defensive guy, I'm trying to do the exact same thing because I love how it formulates and informs the coach during the game. And then I also love that the fact that I have efficiency numbers getting fed to me from our modern football computer that's actually telling me, when to stay on a call and when to move down, right? So we always call it set, stress, break. And with set, that's always like our fastball, like best call we like in that situation, right? So if we're talking P and 10 personnel, 75% pass, as we're looking at the breakdown, we're looking at the type of concepts they like to run out of that. Maybe they're a little bit more quick game. Maybe they're a little bit more 5-step. And then from there, we're going to have our set call. Okay. So this is like the best call that we like versus that. All right. And then we have what's called a stress call, which is a little bit of a change up, and a break call, right? The break call is always something we're looking to do that's exotic, different, unique. Maybe they've never seen it. And if they have seen it, maybe we haven't done it a ton. Right. So it's going to catch them really off guard when they see it. Right. So set call, best call, we're always going to use modern football as an efficiency standpoint. If I'm calling stack choice as our set call, we're going to say, hey, stack choice is the best thing. We're going to run it until it breaks. Okay. So as we're doing that, stack choice, calling it during the game, as long as it's staying around a good efficiency hard line. And I think that's different for every coach. For us, we're always looking at 40%. So 40% is, again, showing the offense's success rate. As long as the offense is staying below 40% success rate in that category on this call, we're going to keep coming back to this call because that means that this call is working at minimum, usually around 2 out of 3 times. right? Once it's getting over 40%, that means that that call is now stressed. It's compromised because the offense is adjusting and picking it up better. So now we want to go to our stress call. Okay. So as we go to the stress call, okay, maybe we need to mix up the front or get a different coverage matchup with our pattern match cover 3. Okay. So then I can call Okie drop Cleo as our stress call adjustment, right? I have the ability to make that adjustment call quickly because once we're off the field on a drive, my coach in the box can relay that efficiency information to me. Hey, stack choice is hitting 44% now, okay, after this last drive. So I can say, okay, let's go to Okie drop Cleo next time we get it, right? And then we kind of stick on the same thing where we're looking at 40% on the stress, okay? If the efficiency is bad on both of these, right, then we're going to go to our break call. We need to show them something completely different. Okay. So then maybe that's a pressure call. Maybe that's a man call where we're totally changing the coverage concept completely, where maybe we've been more one high middle field close look. Okay. Now they're really hitting the seams really hard. So we need to get our safeties wider and get them out. Right. So then we can have our break call, something totally different, something that maybe beats protection in those rules as we're watching that during the game with replay as well. So then we can make a different call. That's our break, meaning our set and our stress is now broken. It's time to hit our breakout call to hit something completely different on them. And we just kind of follow this pattern throughout the game with all these categories based off personnel and D&D. And then the other thing we're going to do is at halftime, when we get the computer down as a staff, we sit down and look at the reports together. We're going to check these categories and make sure that these run pass splits are still consistent with what we game planned for. Mm-hmm. So maybe that P and 10 personnel in our 3-game breakdown was 75% pass, but today it's 75% run. Okay. All right. Well, if it's 75% run, what are they running? Okay. Again, we could get a little pull down on the report that shows us that in that situation, those run plays are counter. Right? Very, very counter heavy. So then from there, we could say, okay, well, we know what we're good at with defending counters. So we can say, hey, we need to call more snapper, more bubble check, things like that, that really are hard for gap scheme to block. And then from there, we could start, making adjustments and writing it down on the call sheet to say, hey, this is now 75% run. This is what we need to call in this situation. Great example of that is, state semifinal or NorCal championship this year. We played a really good Archbishop Bruton team that hung up 38 points on us in the first half. Yeah. And when we came down and, we kind of started putting together ideas in the second quarter, but at halftime, it was really solidified in that, okay, if they are heavy zone run, much heavier zone run than we anticipated, and we've been seeing in our coverage families that we're playing with a 6-man box with a run fit rule that's not working clearly. And they're still hitting some shots over the top as well, but they're running way more zone run than we anticipated. And they're also doing it with 11 personnel, which is not something we anticipated. Okay. But we as a turn also know that if we call this coverage family versus 11 personnel zone run, these coverage families help defend that a lot better than what we've been doing. So as we're starting to kind of do in the second quarter, and then we can see those calls are efficient, we just really absolutely commit to it at halftime. And then second half, we didn't give up a single point. It was a goose egg shutout in the second half, and then we win the game 42-38. So it was an amazing game, amazing comeback, a lot of pieces that offensively and special teams that helped contribute to winning that game. But that was something on the defensive side of the ball that really contributed to that second half shutout, was just the process of how we evaluate the numbers and know how to get our kids in the right situations to be successful.
Yeah. And for our listeners, I have a video that I actually talked to Jordan. Well, it was later on a Saturday night. I think before he was digging into his work, he was definitely at that point, maybe have woken up from a nap, but, I'll put that video in our article that'll go along with this. You'll be able to find that there at coachingcoordinator.com. Now, I did have you answered one of my questions because it was about the historical data. So I love that detail that you gave us, that's how you're looking at it. You've talked about the different kind of break points for you when, hey, we need to move along in our call progression here. A couple things I'm wondering. Does an explosive uh, change that? Is there anything that will accelerate the move to the next call for you? Is one explosive going to change it? Is two play might still start to show up as non-efficient, but they might have hit it a couple times. Anything in that regard, in the way you look at it, that might adjust the way you're thinking about that?
Yeah, and I think with explosives, what we really try to go back and do is when we're off the field, if a coach didn't see it in real time, what really happened, we're going to go find that on the replay as soon as we're off the field. And typically, I think what we find with explosives is that it was some type of technical bust where a player misexecuted the call, right? It's rarely something where it's actually schematically based because we put our calls through so much rigor and testing again as part of our Sunday meeting, and putting it through those big 6 components, right? Of making sure they're not able to motion themselves or formation themselves into creating an explosive play because the play call is not sound, right? So that is something that rarely happens, and I tend to not panic after one explosive. I think that's an inevitable part of the game because I think it's just misexecution most of the time is what we see. So you try not to panic after one explosive. If there's multiple explosives, there's something wrong, right? So that multiple explosives is typically, you're trying to speed that up a little bit. Obviously, efficiency percentage is going to expose that. If it's a play like what we were seeing in the first half of that semifinal game where a lot of explosive zone run happening, then that's going to be pretty obvious, right? If we're seeing a lot of explosive zone run happening, we need to rethink this a lot quicker and say, whatever we were doing for this is not good, so we need to make an adjustment quick.
Yeah. The other question was just looking at is later in the game is maybe in a certain situation that you have on your call sheet, you see like, man, we've really just held them with our base call. Is there anything in your gut that ever tells you, let's change it up for them? I know this has worked, but let's change it up. Is that something you stick with? Are you disciplined about it? Is it something that's intuitive and like, I'm gonna beat them to the punch? Anything like that?
Yeah, I think that all comes from your preparation, and I think there's a lot of validation in numbers that confirm your gut that I can trust to an extent. But the best part about this is this isn't an AI ask Madden thing where it's going to call the play for you, right? This is something that's informing you of what you should call, and as long as you are prepared, any good coach that's prepared and has spent enough time in film, you should be able to trust your gut. So I think there are those times where it's like, okay, I think this is late in the game and we haven't called this yet and it may be time to call it even despite what the numbers are saying, right? I think what I really trust about the numbers is because I think back when I was an offensive coordinator and if it was kind of a crunch situation, I think offensive play callers always go back to who they are in those situations. And so maybe that's forcing the ball to a certain player or it's running a certain concept or a certain formation. Guys are always going to go back to who they are. So if you've watched enough film on that opposing play caller, you're going to have a pretty good idea what they like to do in that situation, regardless of what your numbers are saying, because they're just going to go back to who they are at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, and it is at those stress points in a game, usually when that might come out that, you can count on those things a little bit more. That the data is all helpful, but hey, this is who you are when the stress is on and under pressure. This is what I'm going to see from you.
Yeah, for sure. I think a big thing too that is maybe a little underestimated is watching offensive line protections and watching how, especially tackles and guards, where their eyes go in their pass pro. And so being able to determine, slide directions and things like that based off running back placement, and then watching their eyes and seeing if, as that game goes on and that tackle is really keeping his eyes locked on the 4 eye and he's not peeling his eyes back outside anymore, that's a great way to dial up when your stress or your break call is, because if you can dial up that pressure where, hey, this tackle's kept his eyes glued on the 4-eye the last 3 pass sets he's had, right? Then we know we can send some pressure off that 4-eye side and it's probably going to hit home.
Yeah. Well, I really love how the in-game data, the real-time data is helping you get to these insights quicker, because it's all about who's going to make those. They always say who has the chalk glass, right? Who's the guy who's going to make the adjustment when it's the right time, and that's what this data does for you. Like you said, this is not, Madden 3 pop plays are popping up in front of you and you choose from that. It's understanding, and it's especially, Jordan, I think what you've explained very well. This doesn't, oh, all of a sudden we have this tool on game day and now we're going to use it. You guys have been working with the tool and set this up from Saturday on, and all the work that you've done. It's really just built to this point. So now that tool becomes very useful to you. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people use with game day technology is it doesn't come out till game day. That's a problem.
Yeah. Technology is amazing when you evaluate your practices and figure out ways to actually integrate it instead of it just being something you're going to do, right? And I think I remember the very first time we used sideline replay, and we got to game day on a Friday night and I didn't even know we had it. I was an assistant coach. This was 11 years ago. And I didn't even know we had it. And our head coach had purchased it. We never practiced using it, never practiced what the operation looks like coming for players coming on and off the field, where they should go to watch replay with their coach, nothing like that. And so imagine this, but we get to game night and it doesn't work. And it had nothing to do with the technology. It was just, we had not even considered how we integrate it into what we do, right? So we spent a lot of time, putting thought process into that. With modern football, something we always do is during our spring ball sessions, we have what's called a bulldog ball period, where it's best on best and we're going up tempo. Offense is calling their best plays, we're calling our best plays. And I actually have my coaches go up in the box and we practice it just like a game, right? And so we're up there. We don't even set up the headsets because you can do it on AirPods now, right? So we're on a conference call on our AirPods and we're communicating to each other just like we would be in a game, right? And so I got my guy up in there and he's calling out the personnel, he's calling out the opponent concept as the play's happening, and then I got my guy that's doing the computer that's tagging all of this, right? And then once we get off the field at the end of the series, we take time to kind of review the information over the headset before the offense comes back on the field. And it's a quicker turnaround because it's practice, right? So everything is sped up so much faster during that practice time when we're doing it, that we're able to actually quickly evaluate ourselves at what we need to be better at or what we need to change in that practice from a communication standpoint to actually be able to do this in a game. Because when we get to the game actually slows down for us and now we're even better at it. Right. And then it does put us in that situation where if we are seeing an up-tempo offense, we're very prepared to play it. So it's a really good practice. So how we've done it. And then, it's teaching our guys how to review the information and interpret the numbers. And, my guy figures out what types of numbers are important to me, because I'm not going to sit there and look at the screen as I'm calling plays or reviewing replay. That's his job. So those guys upstairs, they understand now, because as they're going through the reports, they figure out what information is important to me that I want and what information I don't want. So I'm not, spoon-fed too much information at one time. I'm just getting the exact things that I need and nothing else. And then that's what's helping us get this done at game speed.
I'm going to wrap around back to that in a minute, but for our listeners and really the guys viewing this right now, and you can view all of our episodes now on Spotify. We'll have them on YouTube. So someplace, and our website too at coachingcoordinator.com. You'll be able to see this. I want to make sure we just walk through the rest of your setup, because I do think, man, a call sheet is so important. I think whether guys adopt yours or just learn something from it, I think there's a lot here. So I just want to finish walking through what this looks like and what you've set up.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think we always talk about our unit goals over here. So this is something that we use modern football to track. So pretty much every quarter, we're going to try to review this. Are we making sure our offense gets 10 or more possessions in a game? That's a unique one, but we're big about that one here at Folsom, and we got data that proves that that's an effective thing for us. Is the opponent under 125 rushing, under 5 yards per play average? Are we 65% plus on third down? Are they 22 points or less and 1 TFL per drive, right? So we can actually track all 6 of these in real time. And what we're going to do with that too is, on top of our efficiencies for set, stretch, break, is we're going to make sure that we're on track for all 6 of those unit goals. And if we're on track for all 6 of those unit goals, percentage of us winning is 100. We've never hit all 6 of these goals and not won a game, right? So we're always tracking these in real time. And 10 plus offensive possessions can be scary, but because what that means is you have to be more aggressive sometimes, right? And if an opponent's really milking the clock and your offense is not getting the ball back and their hands get chances to score, that can be a really frustrating one, because sometimes that means your explosive call could lead to an explosive play for the offense because you're just being too aggressive. But in a sense, what we're trying to do is to make sure that they get enough chances to score points to help us win the game. Under 125 rushing is always a sound thing. Evaluating our run fits, 5 yards per play, evaluating if that's a technique issue or if it's a alignment issue. 65% plus on third down. We're big on that, evaluating what our third down calls are. We always try to be a completely different defense on third down than we are on first and second, because it just gives a different element that the opponent has to prepare for. So that's when we're going to a lot of our 3 high stuff, running some sim cover 2 pressures, things like that. So that's always evaluating, are we able to actually get off the field on third down? 22 points is just making sure you're structurally sound, right? And then, Kirby Smart was big on the negative plays, havoc rating. I know Coach Walsh over at Sarah talks about that a lot too, and they do a great job tracking it as well. And we're big on it too. We got to make sure we get 1 negative play per drive, because if we could force 1 negative play per drive, chances of the offense scoring goes down by 90%. So always finding ways to have sound aggression and timing to hit these 6 are things we're going to track during the game as well.
Yeah, what's really been interesting to me in talking to different users of modern football and in-game analytics is that there are really these goals that, you typically see these in a locker room on a board, and, little decals or helmet stickers next and whatever it might be, that you got your goal or a blank spot there. But man, how powerful do those become when you're actually tracking them real time, when you can affect these in game, when you know these things and say, man, we've really got to dial up what we're doing here to get tackles for loss, whether that's a pressure or changing the run fit or whatever it might be. That real-time data you're getting so much more meaningful and effective than just what is sitting on a board statically in a locker room.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll testify the the negative play and the 10 plus offensive possessions. So that's something being able to track in real time is incredibly valuable. Just because, it does help inform the play calling. We played Coach Walsh and the Padres at Sarah this year, and that was a game we actually hadn't been able to get over the hump for a while. And one of the things that we paid attention to those previous 3 games that we lost to them was our offense never once got 10 possessions against them. And some of those games were really low scoring, really tight games, and situations where we've lost to them twice by 1 point. And so that was something this year we were going to really make sure that we were going to try to hit 10 plus offensive possessions for our guys. And that meant we had to be a lot more aggressive on defense against them than what we had been in previous years. In turn, what happened was we gave up quite a bit more points than we had given up against them. We gave up 35 points on defense, which was not normal for us. Normally we're much lower than that. But what happened was our offense scored 56 points. and against the team that had been very successful defending us, but they had a very good day offensively, and we were feeling that in the game that they were cooking, and they finally had them dialed in. So we're like, okay, we got to be aggressive and make sure they keep getting the ball back. And that meant a few more explosive plays for them, a few more points for them on the board, but we finally got over the hump and beat them at the end of the day. So that was a fantastic example of, what that metric did for us this year.
Yeah. Who's on game day? Who's identifying, communicating those things? What's that process with you, with your coaches? You said we're doing it between series.
Yeah. So I have two coaches in the box. One is definitely the spotter, the eye guy. He's given me the personnel and things like that as he's IDing it from the box. He even has a set of binoculars he uses sometimes to help him with that. He's very, very good at it. And then I have another coach that's doing the tagging on the computer, tags our whole play call, yard line, D&D, and opponent's information. He's able to tag it all by himself on the computer. And so from there, when we get to off series, the first thing we do is we take our kids over to the TV to watch the replay. And as I'm going through the replay, because all of this stuff has been charted on the computer, he can actually go through the playlists. And so I just give him the cue, hey, play one last series. He reads me the play call, and then I'm giving the corrections to the kids. As I'm giving the corrections, he can actually type things in the notes column on that playlist that can also import into Huddle. Again, going back to what's helping us break down the film faster on Saturday with the kids is all of that information imports. Once we get done with the corrections for that series and get through it, then we start going through the reports. He has some things that he comes through and looks for on his own intuition to give me. And then there are things that I ask for, right? And so as he goes through the reports, he can find pretty quickly, hey, here's your efficiency on your fronts, this drive. Here's your efficiency on your coverages. Hey, this D&D situation, they were a lot more run heavy than we expected. Maybe they're 80% run. We thought it was more like 40-60. And so he'll give me those things during the off-series piece. As I'm hearing that, I'm going to take a look at my call sheet, make notes of anything that I need to change. Then once we're back on for the next series, we're ready to roll. We're informed and going.
Yeah, I think what I said, I wanted to wrap back to something that I've just really heard you talk about and noticed here is for technology, any technology to be successful, it's usually the human processes that fail. And what you've done, I think, really well is you've thought about, and you talked about maybe you reshaped things a little bit, but it was because you're getting more information now. You've thought about how does this fit with us, not just on game day, but from end to end. And then you have a process on game day too, right? And I think where I see technology fail coaches is when the human processes fail, when there is not a workflow of this is how we communicate this information, this is when we communicate this information, this is who's responsible for communicating this information. Not having the details behind that is when it will fail for you, and you get frustrated with it and honestly abandon it. And I think it is thinking about not only this is what the technology does for us, but this is how we're going to use it as a coaching staff and make it work for us. And I think that's what you've done really well here and what you've been able to set up.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's, I think the best part about being around modern football this much is we have a network, right? We have a network of coaches all over the country at different levels, from the CFL and the NFL to Division I college football to small college football, and some of the best large high schools in the country, and then small high schools as well. And all of these guys have something to offer. So as you're visiting with them, whether it's at a clinic or over a call, they're more than happy to share their experiences using it and where it's been effective for them. And from there, you can really evaluate your practices and self-reflect, because, this is a way that I do it and it's not perfect for everyone. But you can visit with a Boise State and talk to their offensive coaches about how they implemented it this year. You can visit with a small high school in Oklahoma or Nebraska, and you can get information from how this guy used it for his self-scout process. And from there, it's really evaluating and looking at your methods and how you integrate it and making it your own workflow.
Yeah, you said that perfectly. So we'll wrap this up. right there, Jordan. I really appreciate you walking us through this entire call sheet. I know we'll get that from you, the template at least, and make that available to coaches. We'll have information in the show notes. Be sure to go back and check Jordan and our talk from post. I guess it was a day later, 24 hours later, after a big comeback win in the semifinal, and some of the things we talked about there. And be sure to check out Modern Football at modernfootball.com. Really think this is a tool that can help you, and would love to see more coaches using it. If you use it already, would love to hear from you too, and some of the things that you found. So Jordan, congratulations again on a great season. Thank you for joining us, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. Thanks for having me.
Coach Irsik's call sheet is a reminder that game day rewards clarity. When your staff has a shared framework, you call it faster, communicate it cleaner, and adjust with confidence instead of emotion. This episode is powered by Modern Football technology. To get Coach Irsik's call sheet and see how Modern Football supports real-time decision-making, go to modernfootball.com/call sheet. Be sure to follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com. We have AI companions for our episodes and series. We have our events coming up, like Lauren's First and Goal. Over 100 coaches who give their time and presentations to charity. You can find that at lfgclinic.com. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode.